All right, I'd like to welcome Pauline at the GMR web team for Pillar 3. And thank you very much. Pauline, I'll let you just take it away.
Okay, awesome. Thanks, Sturdy, for having me. So yeah, today is the third installment of my series with Sturdy. So today we'll be discussing the third pillar of healthcare marketing success, which is creating a strong online presence. Of course, that's needed to get more patients to your physical therapy practice. So we'll dive into that today. Yeah, just some quick background on me. I'm a marketing account manager here at GMR Web Team, where we help practices, create a loyal and satisfied patient base, improve their online reputation and their online presence. So on today's agenda, I'll go over the three pillars just for those who haven't attended the previous webinars, just so you understand GMR's approach to healthcare marketing. And then we'll talk about why having a strong online presence definitely matters for PT practices. And then we'll talk about how you can tackle local SEO, website and mobile optimization, and then of course, social media and blog content. And of course, we'll have a Q&A session at the end. So if you have any questions, you can just write them down and we'll answer them at the end. So let's get started. Okay, so the three pillars. So this is GMR's approach. We call it the three pillars of healthcare marketing success. And we believe that every practice's marketing strategy should be strengthening these three pillars. So you should be retaining more patients through a relentless focus on improving patient satisfaction and delighting patients. Because we believe that if you're putting in a lot of effort to marketing, but you're not satisfying patients or retaining them, then essentially all your time and effort are kind of going out the door. So you want to make sure, you create a loyal and satisfied patient base. Second pillar for us is creating a strong online reputation. So we already know a lot of people look at online reviews. So regardless if they come to you via physician referral or a patient referral or insurance company listing, they'll still be looking at your online reviews. So you want to make sure you have a stellar online reputation. And lastly, of course, robust online presence. So a lot of people are using the internet, millions of searches are happening online. So it's a great way for you to capture more new patients, through having a robust online presence. So let's dive into that third pillar. I'm sure because you guys are already here, you know that you need a strong online presence, but I still want to go over exactly, what that means for you and just give some stats. So from our research, we found that 88% of patients use search engines to find, treatment centers, physical therapy practices, doctors. So being found on Google is so key to getting more new patients if you kind of feel like you're plateauing. I know a lot of PT practices tend to get patients through word of mouth and physician referrals, but at the same time, a lot of patients are still looking at your online presence. As you can see, 63% here. So if you're not being found online, you could still potentially lose some of those word of mouth referrals or physician referrals. In addition to that, you're not, just being present for any new prospective patients that are choosing just to go straight online, searching for a new physical therapy practice. So that's our goal here, just to help you improve your online presence and making sure you're getting more new patients consistently, right? So the first thing I want to talk about is local SEO. But before we kind of dive in specifically to what local SEO is, I do want to just lay the foundation of just how SEO works, because I tend to get a lot of practices coming to me and just asking about what it is and that they want it, but they don't really understand how it works, right? So SEO stands for search engine optimization. It's just another way for you to get more organic traffic from search engines, which in turn lead to more inquiries. So how does that work, right? So if you're being ranked on Google, that means if people are searching for certain keywords, then you're getting found online. So from research, if you're getting ranked #1 on or Google organic rankings, then you're getting about 30-35% of the clicks for that total search volume. So if someone, for example, Googles a physical therapist near me and there's 1,000 searches in your area, if you're ranked #1, you get about 30% of those clicks that come through. And then ideally, you'll convert some of those people who land on your website through that, right? And so if you're ranked second, typically you get about 17% of the clicks. So once you go lower, that's when you're getting less traffic. So ideally you want to be ranked in the top 3. But of course, it's a lot of things to go through to make sure you're getting there. But I do want you guys to think about in general when it comes to SEO, just think about what keywords you want to be ranked for, right? So if you're a physical therapist, ideally you want to be ranked for physical therapist near me, physical therapy near me, and a lot of things people forget to use the individual services. So for example, if you're a physical therapy practice that specializes in motor vehicle accidents, you probably want to be found for like car accident physical therapy near me, because then you're capturing more of those people who are readily, looking for someone for a physical therapist in their area, right? So that's the idea behind SEO, is just capturing all those people who are searching, right? So when it comes to that, Google is king. So a lot of the tips I'm going to be giving you is revolving around Google. And specifically for PT practices, since you guys are typically getting patients locally, local search is definitely important. And I just want to share a little bit more about that. So we just talked about like rankings, right? So essentially to build upon that, when you search for physical therapists near me, you can see, usually you see like this little card up here, and those are your local rankings, right? So essentially through Google My Business, and Google is ranking it accordingly to, maybe how well you're optimized, how many, the geographic area of where this person is searching from. And then you have the organic rankings down here. So a few different factors go into what determines your SEO ranking. So that includes how well your website's structured, your online reviews, backlinks, and backlinks are essentially like quality sites that are leading back to your website. So for example, if you have Yelp and it links to your website on Yelp, then that's a backlink to your current website. In addition to that, how accurate your online listings are. So your name, address, and phone number, and then of course, the location the person is searching from. With local rankings, this is probably the best thing, something that can be achieved by a practice themselves. It's a little bit easier to get, move your rankings around here versus organic rankings, because local rankings really are influenced by the geographic area and online reviews and how well your Google business is optimized. Organic rankings are more influenced by how well your website is designed, and like backlinks. But I would still say a lot of the factors I just mentioned still influence all of it. So if you work on all of that, your organic and local rankings should increase. But I'm going to go over specifically, like I said, local rankings, because that's, I would say, a lot easier for practices to manage on their own. So the first tip I have for practices in terms of improving your local rankings is to actually just leverage your online listings. So local listings are so important to your SEO. It's how Google kind of determines which practices they should show, because it's based on location, right? And a lot of smartphone users, typically are looking up things on their phone. So that's usually by location also. So you want to make sure you're actually being listed on Google Business, Facebook, Yelp, Yellow Pages, other healthcare focused sites such as Health Grades. So you might want to ask yourself if you're being listed right now, because it's surprising, a lot of, especially smaller practices I talk to, they're not, some of them don't even have a Facebook, some of them don't have Instagram, some of them aren't really active on Google My Business. So you just want to make sure you actually have a listing, right? And then from there, once you claim your listings, you want to make sure you optimize them. And this is pretty easy to do, I would say, on your end by yourself. First thing is just you want to make sure your listings are accurate. So you want to think about NAP. That's what we call it as marketers. So your name, address, and phone number. And that might seem really obvious to have that all be consistent, but when I look at a lot of practices that come to me and I check their listings, they're actually only about 50% accurate. And that's like the best I've seen. And the reason being is that sometimes their name is slightly different on each listing site, or their address is a little bit different. So that just means that sometimes they use Suite 105 spelled out instead of using the £, or they're spelling out the road instead of using the shortcut. So those are really easy fixes, and you just want to make sure you're consistent, and that really does help your rankings a lot. Another thing is you just want to make sure you're kind of answering all the questions on Yelp, on Google My Business, in terms of what are your COVID protocols, what are your business hours, what's your insurance info, your website. So those are really easy things to do. I find that a lot of practices don't have that much information on their Google My Business, but if you go in and you're looking at all the settings, it's really easy to make sure that gets all updated. And Google likes it too when you're posting on Google My Business a lot, and you're constantly updating your listing. So you just want to make sure you do that and you have a Google My Business. And then, so you can see here, it's another ranking. You can see this practice has a lot of good reviews. So they're ranking a little bit higher than everyone else. They're showing that they have online care. So that's a bonus too, just making sure you have all that information ready for when someone's searching. They're labeled as a physical therapy practice. This one's as a physical therapy clinic. So you just want to make sure you have those keywords in there too, right? Because that's how Google determines what kind of business you are. And that's how they rank you according to the search. So just make sure you have all the correct keywords. You should be able to list more than one if necessary. There's usually a select list. So you just want to make sure you have the right one. I've seen sometimes if it's not being taken care of, you don't even have sometimes a listing, like the keyword in there. So you just want to make sure it's up to date. Another thing you can do too, obviously, to improve your local rankings is to take care of your online reviews, right? So this comes in twofold. So it helps your rankings, obviously, but it also just helps patients, prospects, determine who they want to pick, right? Because a lot of people, majority, they use reviews to determine, okay, who am I going to pick? And then 40% of patients, as you can see here, aren't going to pick someone with bad reviews. So even if you get they come in with a referral and they're still looking you up, if you have 3.0 stars versus someone above you or below you that has 5 stars, they're going to be wondering okay, should I still pick this practice for my physical therapy? So you want to make sure you're generating reviews on a consistent basis and maintaining at least a 4.0 star rating. And as far as generating reviews every month, I recommend getting at least 2 to 3 per month. I know it doesn't seem like a lot, but honestly, it goes a long way if you're generating it every single month. And a lot of practices, they honestly only get reviews every 6 months, sometimes if they're lucky. So making sure you have a process in place is really critical to help your rankings and to help the chances of people calling to book an appointment, right? So kind of comes in twofold for prospects and also for Google rankings. So I have some tips here to generate more online reviews. I did go into depth with this on the second pillar webinar I did with Sturdy previously, but here are some tips. I do recommend having some kind of automated service or process to generate more online reviews. A lot of your EMRs should have something. If not, I recommend using some kind of online reputation management software. This just helps because you can definitely ask your patients to get reviews, train your staff, but a lot of times the staff might get shy or they forget to ask. So kind of taking that human aspect away with online reputation software, it just helps increases the likelihood, patients will leave reviews, right? And I also recommend to be strategic of when you ask for reviews. So I recommend, since patients typically come in for a consultation, they go to a few sessions before they have their last session, I usually recommend maybe serving them halfway through. And then at the very last session when, they've gone through all the physical therapy and they have great results, because that's going to position you in the best place to get more reviews, right? Third thing is, if you don't want to use online reputation software, I very, much suggest that you use some kind of QR code. It's really easy to generate, and that QR code should link to a review site like Google or Yelp or Healthgrades. It just makes it easy for patients to leave reviews, right? So they don't have to hunt down, okay, how do I leave a Google review? So you want to do that. And then, of course, like I said, you can ask patients in person, but I recommend having some kind of QR code or something in person for them to actually kind of force them to leave a review, because if you kind of ask them, they might forget by the time they get back to their car, quite honestly. So I recommend having some kind of platform like that, because like I said, generating more reviews looks good on your practice, plus that helps with your local rankings. In addition to that, I also recommend displaying reviews on your website, because if you're working so hard to get reviews, I would say, just want to make sure you capitalize that and then put it on your website, because it helps too, right? If someone's finding you via your website and they see all these great reviews, you're kind of okay, why wouldn't I pick this physical therapy practice? So you just want to make sure you display your reviews. You can have some kind of widget if your EMR or your reputation platform has that. But if not, just list them as a text and just update them every so often with the latest reviews. So that's what I recommend. Okay, so now we covered some of the stuff for local listings. So let's talk about websites. because I think this is really important to talk about with a lot of practices, because that plays a really important role into getting more patients online, right? Your website's a critical part of your brand. It's your marketing tool. So I would say even if your website looks great, if it's useless, marketing wise, then you kind of paid for nothing, right? So I've had some clients come to me where their website's not being found on Google, so it's not being indexed. So either they worked with some web developer that they made a great website, but when you Google the practice's name, it's not even being found online. It's not a very common case, but it can happen if you don't work with the right web developer. So you just want to make sure your practice is found online. You can always Google your practice name and make sure it pops up on Google search. But another thing I just want to mention to everybody is to make sure your website loads really fast. So that's a big issue with a lot of websites, especially on mobile, because you can imagine if someone searches your practice, they're like, okay, I want to go with this person, and it takes forever for the website to load. People are going to get frustrated and they're going to go pick somebody else. So just make sure your website loads fast. Make sure it's responsive. So that means it'll adjust to whatever device the person is using. So if they're using tablet, if they're using mobile, desktop, you just want to make sure the website will adjust and it'll look nice on every single device. Third, really important, make sure you make it easy for people to request appointments online or to call you. I've talked to a lot of practices. I just signed on a physical therapy practice a few months ago, and she didn't have a call button on her website. And that's such a big thing that you need to have, because some patients prefer forms, some people prefer to call. So you want to use, like I said, your website is a tool to get more patients. So make sure you have a call button, everything's all working on the site. So I recommend, like I said, after this webinar, check your site right now. Do you have all those things? Do you have a form? Do you have a contact us form? Ways for people to schedule appointments. It kind of goes missed because I feel like people worry about the aesthetics of the website, which is important, but functionality is also really critical. So that's what I recommend. And then I also want to talk about mobile optimized sites in more detail, because when I first started at GMR, I started about 3 years ago. Mobile traffic for a lot of my client sites were only about like 30%, but now for all of them, it's at least, over 60% is coming from mobile. So if your site isn't mobile optimized, you're losing out a lot of people who, for example, are coming out of their doctor's office. They're searching right there on their phone for maybe your practice, or they just find out like, okay, I need to see a physical therapist, and they're on their phone. So you just want to make sure it's mobile optimized, because it makes sure people stay on your website. And then Google also cares about how users interact with your website on mobile. So if your mobile website's really poor, it's loading slowly, then that dings you too on your local rankings and then your regular organic rankings. So make sure your site's well designed in that aspect, because a lot of people forget that they only see things on desktop. So mobile is just as important. So if you're kind of wondering what a good mobile site looks like, I have a few examples. So these are a few sites. They're not physical therapy related, but it still applies the same way. The concept of making sure you have a consultation, like a appointment request button. You have like a phone number readily available. So you can see that here. It's very easy for someone to find out where everything is. Like I said, I've had a lot of websites where it's like you can't find the mobile phone number on mobile, or it's formatted a little odd. So you want to check your site on mobile. That's something a lot of people forget. So that's just, some recommendations here. Make sure you work with a web developer that's familiar with mobile and desktop, and then check their work too. That's the easiest way to kind of see if they know what they're doing, is to see samples. So if you're looking to upgrade your website, these are things to really keep in mind, for the future. So when you upgrade it. So last thing is content and social media marketing, because I also get this question asked too. So you might be thinking, okay, should I do blogs? Should I do social media? So maintaining blogs and doing social media can be a lot of work, but I would still say it's something really important to consider and to do, because A, it helps you provide helpful information to current patients and prospects. B, it helps build your authority in the field, right? So if you're always posting content, tips on social media, it kind of, you'll be seen as a very informed, up-to-date physical therapy practice, right? Another thing too, when it comes to blogs, Google really does like fresh content being posted on your website. That's why you see a lot of marketing agencies provide that, because it's beneficial to SEO. Because Google likes to see new content, because if you haven't updated your site in 10 years, they're going to think it's not as relevant as someone who's posting more frequently. In addition to that, blogs also help with keyword ranking. So if you're doing a blog on car, motor vehicle accident, physical therapy, and you're doing a blog on that, so it can help you get ranked and get more traffic in for those keywords. So I recommend, if you're working with an agency right now, making sure you do blogs. GMR does it for all of our clients. We do blogs as part of one of the packages. But if you can't do blogs and it's a lot of work, I recommend to at least do social media. A lot of practice I have, like, they're not consistent, or maybe they're not having someone, posting all the time. But I would say consistency is so key. A lot of people are using social media to search up like health information. You can also reach a younger target audience because you tend to be more on social media. So very least, make sure you have Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. You're posting on all of it. Same thing with Google Business. So you can see here, this is one of the practices I recently signed. We started doing posts for her. So you want to mix in educational content. You don't want to always just sell. So providing information about what shockwave therapy is, what do you do about shoulder pain, how can a physical therapist eliminate pain? In addition to that, mix it in with some more content about your staff, just real life, what's going on in the practice right now, because I find that a lot of patients like to see that, and also encourage a lot of your patients to follow you on social media, just because I think it helps keep your practice top of mind. So if anything ever happens to them, hopefully not, but if something occurs where they need physical therapy again, they know to think of you guys. Or if they know someone who needs a referral, they can send, your social media account, say, hey, check out this practice. So I think it's really important to make sure you, continue to maintain that brand, that presence online. Social media definitely helps with that. So I would say it's really critical to at least do social media if you can't do blogging and social media. That's the very least. So yeah, these are some easy to implement tips and things you should know about improving your online presence, especially for local. So just a quick recap of everything. So we talked about why it's important to have a robust online presence, right? Because people will still be looking at your practice online. We also talk how to tackle local search and how critical Google My Business is to your practice. So you want to make sure you claim all your listings, update your Google My Business, update your Yelp, because that helps a lot with your local rankings. In addition to that, reviews are so critical, right? So you want to make sure you're consistently generating positive reviews, responding to all reviews, and having some kind of process in place to ensure you're generating the reviews. In addition to that, we also talked about what you should have on your website, right, in order for it to be a marketing tool rather than just something you have to have, because you want to make sure your website's bringing in new patients, right? And we also talked about some best practices for content and social media marketing, especially for social media, making sure you have all your accounts, that you're active, you're posting consistently. That's really key to making sure, you're showing you're up to date with everything. So those are some just easy to implement tips on improving your online presence. I do want to emphasize though, a lot of this stuff works together. As you can see, the reviews affect local search, website affects local search, social media just affects how, patients perceive you. So it's all linked together. So that's why I suggest using a combination of strategies. If you're kind of doing social media alone, it's kind of harder to make an impact. Or if you're only doing just reviews, like, you want to make sure you're kind of tackling everything at once. So as far as these tips, they should be easy to implement for you as a practice itself. So yeah, that's kind of a rundown of the presentation, but I would love to take more questions. I see some stuff in the chat because I feel like, let me see here. I feel like
Pauline, Dustin was asking about how to get your location pin on Google Maps.
Let me see here. Leave it over. Location pin. So I would say that kind of goes back to optimizing it, making sure you're getting reviews on a consistent basis, because you might be showing on Google Maps, but you might be on the 3rd or 4th page. So I would say making sure you're optimizing posting on Google Business, kind of links back to your website's still important, making sure your website's optimized. I would say reviews though, the more reviews you have, the less likely you'll be buried on page 3 or 4. So that's what I would say.
Make sure you've claimed your Google My Business site too.
Yeah,
if you haven't
exactly.
already.
Yeah, because I think a lot of people they don't touch their Google business because I feel like they think, okay, I have it, but you just want to make sure, because Google's always rolling out new things. So recently they rolled out insurance. So you can put what insurance you accept. And then if someone searches, Medicare for physical therapy, you have an opportunity to, be shown or not be shown. So making sure you're on top of it and kind of monitoring what's going on with Google business. But I would say posting on it and getting more reviews, that's one of the best ways to make sure you're moving up slowly, because I'm pretty sure you're showing up on maps, but you just might be on the 3rd or 4th page, depending where you live.
And you went into the reviews last time, right? So one of the things that Pauline shared that was so great was like in the office, if you have a QR code that goes straight to your Google reviews, they can, use their phone, scan it, and type it in right then while they're excited. Remember when that's a perfect time, right? When they're saying, oh my gosh, I didn't know PT could be like this, or you're the first one who ever helped me solve my problem, or hey, do me a big favor. And you can get your employees to do that too by saying, hey, if you want to help me out, my boss sees those reviews. And then people are like, oh,
exactly.
okay. And they'll do that.
Yeah, I would say that's the best way. If you don't want to do reputation software, that QR code is so easy to do. And like I said, you can ask patients, like Sturdy said, but kind of putting them in front of the QR code and just asking them is the best way you can get them to leave a review. So
Dimitri had questions.
Yes. How do we figure
keywords?
Yeah. So that's a good question. So what keywords do you want to be ranked for is essentially your services, right? In the main keywords. So for my physical therapy practice that I work with, so she does like shockwave therapy. She specializes a lot in like motor vehicle accidents. So you want to make sure your website actually has those services, those pages listed. I find a lot of websites, they just kind of have their homepage, maybe a little bit of about us, but they don't actually have individual pages for each services, and that can help you get ranked. So the keyword selection, I would say that's like probably the easiest part, because you just think about, okay, what are my patients searching? So physical therapy near me, maybe if you're in like Tempe in Arizona, you say physical therapy in Tempe or Mesa. And then you just want to make sure you have your services. And I would say, like I have those individual service pages. Another thing too, a lot of people, if you notice with a lot of sites, sometimes they'll say like physical therapy in Los Angeles, California on the homepage. That helps with the rankings. So that's why we add the city, because that helps tell Google, say, hey, we do physical therapy in this city. So we want to get ranked for that. As far as reviewing them every few months, I would say you just want to make sure your content has those keywords in it. So if you have like shockwave therapy, just in your content, make sure you say, hey, we provide shockwave therapy in Los Angeles, California. This is what shockwave therapy is. This is how the process works. You don't want to just like put a ton of keywords in the pages. Google knows. So you don't want to just like put them all in there. You just want to make it really natural when you write the service pages, create those individual pages. As far as reviewing them every few months, I would say it's more important to make sure you have like your webmaster has Google Search Console installed, because every time Google rolls out an algorithm update, you might have to update some things on your website to abide by their protocols. So just make sure you work with your web developer if you have one, or a GMR. That's what we do with our clients. We just make sure we're updating the site consistently based on Google search. But I would say you wouldn't have to update your services or your keywords every month. You just want to make sure if you have a new service, add that on your website. So I hope that answers your question. It's just based on the services you provide. So.
You guys want to know a quick, easy way to do a blog post?
Yeah, Sturdy, you could share. I'd love to know too.
Okay, so use somebody else's article or blog post and comment on it. So if you can put a link, you do attribution, you can even do a quote or something, or first paragraph from it, as long as you're giving attribution and in your opinion. So something you're an expert in. If there's a good article that you find on rehabbing ankle sprains, you can repost somebody else's content and, and link to it, and then say, I love these exercises. I would just add this one thing, right? Or whatever.
Yeah.
And then that is super simple and easy and still positions you as the expert.
Yeah, exactly. And it helps you produce new content. Yeah, especially Sturdy said the attribution is really important. Obviously, don't just copy and paste. I think Google will also ding you for the plagiarism too. Yeah, they'll ding you for that on Google rankings. So be careful too. That brings up a good point with your content service pages. Just be careful whoever is writing it isn't copy and pasting from somewhere else either. I recommend having it be original content. It doesn't have to be super long or anything like that, but I recommend that too. Or like Sturdy said, citing anything you copy. So that's a great tip.
Questions y'all have? What else? You can unmute yourself and.
Yeah, I know if you guys have questions on websites, I feel like I get a lot of questions from practices on like SEO and then website, especially because I feel like a lot of people's websites aren't the most up to date. So
a quick question about the blog posts. We pull a lot of information from PPS website and use them for our blogs. And now I'm worried that we haven't given attribution and it could be affecting our rankings. I guess the question is, since we're paid members of PPS, do we still need to give attribution, or is that our content to post freely?
I can.
Oh, you got it,
I can answer that because PPS does provide some things as like kits intended for you to use.
Exactly.
And in that case, your copy and paste, I would still edit it so and make it your own voice, change a couple things, and inject your own personal, your opinions and stuff. So it's not just straight up, the same thing on 78 other websites.
Yeah.
Right. But where you're taking like an article from the New York Times or an article from, orthopedic section or somebody else, even somebody else's website, because two things. One is PTs, we don't have great market penetration, so I don't consider PT clinics really your competition because they're only seeing about 5% of the population that you could be helping, and as an industry. So even down the block, you could use somebody's. But if you're using somebody from another part of the country, use their article, link to it, give attribution, say, hey, they did a great job on this. Check out this video. Check out, a TikTok link if they're showing a foam roller thing, whatever. But add your opinion.
Yeah.
Got it.
This is good for these things. Boom.
Thanks, guys.
Sure. What else y'all have? You've got Pauline the expert here for a few more minutes too, so you use it.
Well, in that case, I'll ask another question. It goes back to the location pin. We do show up on Google Maps when we search directly for our business.
Yeah.
I'm sure you've done the same where you just look in Google Maps and then there's business listings around you that you're not searching for particularly. So I'm just kind of curious, how do we get to that level of location authority where we'll show up no matter what they're searching for, like other businesses do?
Yeah, so I would say, that would just depend, I think, on how many reviews do you guys have on your Google business profile?
I think we're at 65 right now.
65. I would say are getting on a consistent basis.
It's 1 or 2 a month. I think the last month or two have been kind of sporadic, but we could definitely improve, and that's one of our focuses. I like that you guys mentioned the QRs. We're putting that in. But yeah, just to get that authority of like being on maps no matter what.
Yeah, so I would say still that optimization, because I find that when I get a lot of clients that come in and we're first doing the setup, they're not super, their Google business isn't as detailed as it could be. And then also like what goes into rankings too, I know I mentioned reviews and the searcher's locations really critical for that, local pack ranking on maps. Still some things that factor in, there's like still a little bit of the backlink, still a little bit of the, website, like how well it's built. still factor in. And then also I would say, being consistent on Google business posting. Because it's kind of hard because Google really likes it when you're just active on their platform, because that benefits them, right? So I would say making sure you're posting on Google business. I would say the longer your practice has been there, with the more reviews, it kind of carries a lot more weight too. And also sometimes you will appear, but it just depends on the user's location. And honestly, sometimes that's the best I can tell you, because sometimes Google doesn't really exactly tell us what it takes. We just do it based on assumption of kind of what research has been done, because they never want to tell you their secret sauce. But the best I can tell you is to, like I said, optimize, increase your reviews, because I would say the more reviews you have, just the way better it looks, and Google would definitely want to recommend you. And just making sure your website is optimized. And I say that as in, like, you want to make sure people are actually filling out forms on your website, because Google knows too if people go to your site and then they just hop off. They kind of say, okay, something's wrong with the site. So I would say just making sure you have your forms, your phone readily available, because Google just knows everything. So if you're not getting form fills or anything like that on your site, they're less likely to like recommend it or make it more prominent on Google Maps. So that's another thing too. So kind of it's all interconnected.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah.
And any of you guys, do y'all manage your own websites at all? You have someone?
You guys have like a webmaster? I don't know how old, like when you self-manage. Okay. Is it on, do you guys know if most of your sites on like WordPress, or is it on like Wix or Squarespace? I feel like those are the most common if it's WordPress. Okay.
But everybody else,
WordPress.
WordPress. So
Okay,
while
WordPress.
y'all were talking about after Pauline mentioned that, I added the plugin Google Site Kit to my website. So you can get a plugin and do that. Now I need her help because I don't know what to do with the information it gave me.
I would say if you guys are going to have a site, it's best to have it on WordPress. GMR does custom built because you can control better for like SEO purposes. But the next best thing I would say is WordPress. You just want to make sure whatever developer you're using, or if you're using it yourself, just make sure it's loading fast, because I find at WordPress sites, the more plugins you have, the more slowly it loads. So just be careful with that. But I would say WordPress is the next best option. Wix and Squarespace, it's just really limited on what you can do SEO wise. But it's cheap and it's easy to get like a good looking website live. But I would say WordPress is like the next best thing. So it's good. You guys have WordPress. Just make sure it's optimized on mobile. I feel like that's when a lot of people get caught. It looks good on desktop, but mobile version's not very good. So.
And the biggest mistake I see, or the biggest omission I see over and over, and I think most of y'all aren't doing this, but is having the phone number be hard to find.
Yeah.
When people, why are people looking at your website? There's some coming from search and all that, but a lot of people are looking at your website on their phone as they're leaving the doctor.
Yeah.
Right? They're verifying that you are legitimate, or taking a quick look, or making themselves feel better about it, right? And the next thing they want to do is touch your phone number and call you for an appointment.
Yeah. I think Sturdy has mentioned that to me before. So make sure you guys have something, like, don't make it difficult for everyone to contact you, right? Because your website's your tool. It's not just to make you, look good. So yeah, doesn't send mobiles. Yeah, I always find like when we do an assessment on practices, when they're first talking to us, mobile speed's poor on a lot of websites. We've used Lighthouse before. We tend to use Google Speed, page speed. So if you Google page speed, you type in your URL. That's typically what we use for our assessments. I find it's better to just get the information from Google itself. So, but if your site on WordPress is slowing down, I would say it's probably to do with a lot of maybe the images on your site or the amount of plugins. I feel like that's usually what kind of kills people on mobile. But yeah, That's usually what I find. Google page speed is what we use mostly. Yeah.
Anything else before we wrap up?
I actually had a question. I think you mentioned something earlier about some kind of extension that you can put on Google, like search content, and it allows you to see like updates to what they do. Can you elaborate more on that?
Yeah, so give me a second here. Let me see if I can find the link. So it's called Google Search Console. So if you guys have Google Analytics, it's similar to that, where you just insert like a tracking code.
Is it console or consoled?
A console. So let me find
I just Googled it, Pauline, and installed it.
You put it in there?
So if you go into WordPress, no, I can't put the link in because I did it from within WordPress. Add a new plugin. And
yeah, so Google should have the
search console, Google Search Console, and then it gave me the Google Site Kit, which automatically I just signed in with my Google account and did everything while you guys were talking. It literally took that long.
Yeah, and then you could just log in to Google Search Console and just make sure it's updated. You guys definitely want to check. Google rolled out like 4 algorithm updates in the last 6 months because they paused a lot of stuff because of COVID, but now they're rolling out a lot of stuff. So you just want to make sure you guys check and see. And if you're working with a developer, they should be able to fix a lot of the stuff on Google Search Console. There's an issue, but if they don't know how to do that, then you might need a new web developer. So yeah.
Gotcha. Thank you.
You know, another trick, another little hack for y'all is if you find a company, a site that is overseas, you can, well, I'm not saying copy, but I'm saying use them as inspiration for articles, for videos, for other things. So Physio is a great place because they're great companies and great sites that have paid a lot of money for their stuff, you know, in the UK and Australia and New Zealand, and you know, and they're all English and easy to understand. And you could, if you want to do that thing with the blog and use an article and give attribution and link back to their company, you're not, you know, you're really not worried about giving it away to anybody else, right? You're sending somebody to your competition, and you know, linking internationally makes you even more sophisticated, right?
Yeah, I would say that. And then also another thing too, even when we write our blogs, we pull a lot of reference articles. So we just see, you know, blogs that are really well structured that have different sections. I don't recommend writing a blog in like a huge like paragraph or anything like that. You want to make sure it's sectioned out for keyword purposes. But if you find, we use a lot of reference articles all the time from verified sources, and we just kind of adjust the content and just structure it similarly. But we obviously rewrite it originally for our clients, but there's nothing wrong with using references like Sturdy said. So you don't have to reinvent the wheel. That's my biggest thing. You don't have to at all. You can just make sure you pull reference articles and write something similar, but it's still your own voice, or you're just attributing. So yeah.
Anything else before we wrap up?
I do want to mention, Sturdy, I am offering free assessments and SEO assessments. So for websites and SEO, you just have you know, my email's on here, and Sturdy can send my email to you out after this, but we'll take a look at your website, your reputation score, what are you doing on SEO, and even take a look at, you know, if you have like a lot of errors on your WordPress site, we'll take a look and do a deep dive, and then we'll even do an assessment on competition. So if you kind of have comparable practices in the area that you know are doing well, we can take a look and see what they're doing, because sometimes the bar to reach isn't as high as you think if a lot of other practices in the area aren't really active in marketing. So it makes makes life easier for you. But yeah, we're offering free assessments for website and SEO. So just please contact me if you're interested. You know, no obligation to sign up with us, but I would just love to just see what you guys are doing and help out and see if potentially we could work together. But otherwise, you know, it's a free assessment for you. So
I would highly recommend you guys take advantage of this, because Pauline's insights are great, and then what the process that GMR has to kind of look at it and give you things that you can actually go and change and work on and improve
Yeah.
on your own site and stuff as well. So definitely hit her up for that. Pauline at gmrwebteam.com. Okay.
Yes.
Well, thank you very much, Pauline. Really, really appreciate it. Thanks, everybody.
Yeah, thanks everybody, and thank you, Sturdy, once again.